English geography speaking of the country of England, that is.
My British geography, and not all that well. I know some things.
Have you heard of a place called Hackney? Hackney.
Oddly enough, I have for a very strange reason.
Well, then let's derail my question completely and let's hear your story. By the way, he's New York Vinnie. I'm Michael Knight, and now we're going to hear Vinnie's first story of the day.
No, 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 no. I want to find out why you want to know if I know where Hackney in Britain is.
There's a new album out just today called Hackney Diamonds by a group you probably know called the Rolling Stones.
Still, first new music in what, 20 years?
It's their first studio album in quite a while. It could be as long as getting close to 20 years. I remember their last one. It was a good studio album. Anyway, the new single's out called "Don't Get Angry with Me." Don't get angry, and it's got a great beat to it. But I really like the end of it. I think it's the best part of the song. But it occurred to me that I don't know what these songs, I suppose, are the Hackney Diamonds. They are diamonds from some neighborhood where the Stones probably used to live as kids. But I'm guessing.
Oh, that's interesting. You know, when I interviewed Mick Jagger and Keith Richards back, it was Super Bowl. It was 2005.
I've never done that. Damn you, Vinnie.
Damn me. Um, and one of the questions that I asked him three questions. And the question that I most seriously wanted to get answered was was how has your songwriting style changed from when you were young pups coming up to now? You
Trying to
must
learn
see
how,
the
yeah.
world quite differently, you know, now. This was 2005. Matter of fact, I think that's when they released the last album. Wasn't it 2005? No, it was longer than that. Or
They've
maybe it
had a
was
they've had
2000.
a number of live albums that they've released
Right.
in the
But
sequence.
new content. And I asked him how is it different? Um I'll see if I can dig it up actually. I may have it actually on tape. Because that was the same time that Mick Jagger called me his father.
Well, he would know.
Yeah, yeah. There was anyway. It was interesting. I'll have to dig up the tape here in a couple of minutes. Uh, but yeah, it was. I always had wondered, and not just out of the Rolling Stones. I had wondered about it from different artists that I had spoke to. It almost like was a stock question for me.
If
Eh,
you've written 250 songs, there's got
right.
to be something that you're doing different than you did on the first song.
Yeah, I mean, first song you wrote down on a napkin on a train, or in a plane or something like that, or in a coffee shop when you saw some good-looking woman. Now you have a team of people who look up thesauruses in 89 languages. For the correct word that rhymes with
Turd.
smoking.
Yeah. May I
Yeah.
suggest token? It's been used, and I'm not talking about a token at the subway. I'm talking about a toke in the cannabis sense.
Yes, token. Like we was riding down the road and the car was smoking, but we didn't notice because we was way, way token,
And you can, of course, go one toke over the line, which has happened.
which Brewer and Shipley did.
Someone
And
said one half of Brewer and Shipley teaches college in their hometown at a junior college or state university or something. Got himself a decent job. Poor guy.
really, does he teach music? Did you say or English?
Yeah, he's on the staff. He's a professor of some sort,
Ah,
which you
well, you
wouldn't
know
expect.
that.
You never
It's,
know with Brewer and Shipley. One minute it's one took over the line. Next minute it's hand in your blue books.
yeah. Well, interestingly enough, two that I know of, and actually three members. Well, two that I know of. There might be a third though. Members of Sha Na Na
Oh yeah.
were and are professors. Frederick Dennis Green, who was the only black member of the band up until that time. I think they had other black members now, but he was one of the guys in the gold lame suits.
Yes,
Uh,
Gold LeMay.
he was on the staff of University of Oregon for many years, and then wound up working for, I think, Columbia Pictures, if I'm
Wow.
not mistaken, as a diversity. I forget exactly what it was, but this guy was. He was really smart. I mean, all those guys came out of Columbia, or almost all of them, so they all had to be smart to begin with.
Here's
They're
a
all
double Jeopardy question for you. Double Jeopardy. What football conference is the University of Oregon again?
Big Ten, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep. Vinnie wins. Of course, the legal answer is they're still in the Pac-12.
Right.
But
But you're headed toward, somebody released a 2024 Pac-2 schedule yesterday.
and do the Cougs play the Beavers ever in that?
That's all they play, except
Just,
for 3 non-conference schools.
so that would be Bard College of Fairleigh Dickinson.
You're going to see some interesting names. Although this year they play Wisconsin, I believe. Don't they start against Wisconsin, or is that the Huskies? Am I
I don't know the
confused?
Husky schedule. I do know the Buffalo schedule, and they play Nebraska next in Boulder, Colorado, and it's going to be prime time. I should have worn my prime hat. I'm not by education a Buffalo myself, but my wife Kristen and my daughter Kailani both attended the University of Colorado, and during Parents' Weekend, Vinny, I can assure you, I saw a lot of losing football during Kailani's years in Boulder. So I'm intending to catch up on that. I saw the game this weekend against TCU, and I thought of Mike Price. Thank God you're not there now, Mike Price. You wouldn't want to be the coach when the Buffaloes come to town and beat you on your home turf.
Yeah.
In Fort Worth, no less.
They played Colorado State Saturday and beat them 50-24.
Wow.
They will have Wisconsin.
Go Badgers.
Coming up Saturday out at Pullman. Northern Colorado, I guess they're making a run of all the Colorado schools. Northern Colorado in Pullman on the 16th, and then the 23rd, they'll see their first, a Pac-10 opponent, Oregon State, in Pullman.
They're Pac-2 partner now.
Yeah. Then they'll head down to UCLA, back home for Arizona, then Oregon, Arizona State, Stanford.
And by the way, the Cougars have their hands full against Oregon State. Their quarterback that transferred in from, was it Clemson or Alabama? I can't recall. Ugelele is nobody's fool. He had a great first game and is going to be a big factor in the offensive power of the Pac-12 this fateful last grouping of these teams. Or watch out for Oregon State when they come to town. There are no Pats anymore.
Right. I think one of the more interesting games on this schedule is your Colorado Buffaloes will head into Pullman.
Cool.
On November 17th. And I think that's a perfect opportunity to get a picture of Deion Sanders at the Coug.
Dancing his victory dance.
I don't know. We'll see how it shakes out, but that's a date to mark on your calendar.
Right now, it looks like if you want to beat them, you got to score more than 45 points.
Well, we'll see how this all shakes out. And then you got the Apple Cup, the final Apple Cup.
There'll never be another?
Well, not the way the schedule lays out.
Washington
will be a non-conference school.
Because other schools like Arizona, Arizona State, Cal, and Stanford, aren't they preserving their relationship to the point where they can have at least a game?
I don't know for sure that that's happening.
That's a
Uh,
terrible mistake. That's worse
I
than the
know
pitch
that
clock.
there's a lot of Pat Chun, who is the athletic director at Wazoo, is not happy about the whole thing and how Washington kind of bolted on.
Well, I mean, they watched as USC and UCLA started it. They knew there was going to be follow up. They heard all the rumors. They didn't react. Cal and Stanford barely made an agreement for themselves.
Yeah,
Everlasting's
it's
out there.
I know that there's offers on the table from a couple of different conferences for the Cougars, but it's mostly Big Sky and that kind of. I mean, not to say that they're not to disparage those conferences, but they're not.
Not of
You
the
know, they're
same
not
type
the Big
quality.
Ten, and I don't know. It's I'm discouraged with the whole field of college football and college sports in general. It's really taken a turn, I think, for the West. First of all, for the worst, I don't think it's college sports anymore. These are
Semi pros.
semi-pro teams. They're minor league teams that happen to be sponsored by a college.
Well, there's a lot of truth to that, Vinny. It's just that when college sports changed the way it configured itself in conferences, some schools were bold and made moves into the unknown, but some schools thought to stand pat and hold their cards was the advisable way forward. And if you're Oregon State and Washington State, you're looking at your future being determined not by yourself but by somebody else. It's going to say, "Yeah, you can play football here." You poor Pac-2 teams have to have some football. You can play Coastal Carolina, Northern Colorado, Notre Dame, and then Clemson. Of course, Dabo Sweeney and his Clemson guys got completely rigmarolled by Florida State, and he said, "I have never in my life been involved in a game like this," as if somehow the game happened without him knowing it was going to happen. He was so ill prepared and so crushed by all the mistakes that they made. He looked like a guy named Tuberville that is failing at being a U.S. senator. And
Terribly.
and Dabo Sweeney failed at being a head coach. Didn't take it on himself. He blamed it on something that happened to him that had never happened before. It was a strange press conference.
Yeah, it's a terrible boy. It's really yeah, it's just he has turned into just a joke. I mean, he really has. I mean, every press conference, every time he speaks to the media, he analogizes it to football.
That's a shame because there's some evidence now that he doesn't know anything about football
I think there's always been some evidence that he didn't know a lot about football. Um,
or sports. Maybe he can explain why the Giants and the Mariners can't win when they need to.
yeah, it's not been pretty for the Mariners the last couple of days, has it?
It ain't been pretty for the Giants. They've lost 4 out of 5, I think. And they were ahead last night. It was on TBS, 6-4 in the sixth inning, and in the eighth inning, it was 11-4, 11-6, 11-8, and we're finding new ways to lose. Plays at the plate, loose balls, errors in the infield, stuff that makes you hold your head. But hey,
Yeah,
the Mets comported themselves well over the weekend. I know you're worried about that because you have split loyalties that are not really split, not truly split.
yeah. They as I've said, it's early enough that I was okay if the Mets took all three or 2 out of 3, which they did, or did what they did because it wasn't going to leave the Mariners in that much worse shape. Uh, I mean that may prove to be a factor at the end of the year when they wind up being one game out of the playoffs or something like
Right.
that. But for the moment, it's really nice to to see the Mets beat anybody these days.
I
I mean,
know the feeling. I thought I was going to see that last night. Hey, the Giants are going to beat these guys. In the scheme of things, what does it mean? I don't know. Wait a
we're
minute. The Cubs just came alive. There's 2 home runs. There's another 2 runs. There's a misplay at the plate. Oh God.
we're basically back to a mix and match situation. I mean, they gave up Scherzer and Verlander, rightly so, for what the situation was. But at least if they would have kept those guys, there would have been somebody to go out to the park and see. Um, the Mets just have. Listen, I gotta say that I applaud them for not giving up. I
Did
mean,
they
it,
bring
it,
up, did they bring
it
up some
just
talented
doesn't look
kids?
like. Say again.
Did they bring up some talented kids?
Yeah, there's some talented kids, and some of the guys they got in those trades, are getting some playing time. And I think the Mets' future. I mean, I think you're looking at the future on the field right now. They may add a couple of free agents here and there. I don't think they're going to go on a spending spree like they did, earlier this year, because I think they found out what the Yankees found out a long time ago.
You can't buy it.
Well, you can, but you have to be smart when you're doing it, and that you have to your team has to have a base of talent that you add to, as opposed to just bringing in talent and expecting them to become the Mets.
Something that they
The
said
Mets.
yesterday, something that ESPN did a special on yesterday about the Braves was that they have a in within the team they have a culture that you're lucky if you get. Now the swinging A's used to go to the World Series and fight in the dugout. They were swinging at each other, but that doesn't work anymore. That type of conflict on the bench does not produce a winning team. You have to have guys that get along, and they have to be talented and spur one another to greater heights. I'm hitting 5 home runs today. I'll hit 6. That's the type of attitude you have to have on the bench. And not competitive in the sense that it's negative, but just like, here's how we're going to beat these guys. We're all going to hit home runs. And the Braves have this culture that is, to broadcasters who travel and see all the teams, unique to themselves. And it's hard to imagine that they built it that way on purpose, but the result is the same. They've got a culture that is a winning culture that I always liken to the Los Angeles Lakers of the Magic Johnson days, because they thought they were going to win every game and they didn't even have to discuss it. They all thought, wherever we are, whatever we're doing, if there's a game tonight, Lakers are going to win. And
Right.
that's the way the Braves are playing right now. If they're behind, they're going to figure out a way to come from behind. And I love that attitude. I would like to see it with the Giants, but one of the things that the play-by-play guys for TBS said last night was, how many guys on this Giant team are going to be here next year? What have they put together that is worth keeping? Make a short list of guys that you are not going to get rid of. And we don't have that many people on that list, Vinnie. We just don't have a team that when you gaze at the numbers and the production and the individuals, you say, these guys have to stay. No way we're trading them. They're the core of the team. And that's one thing that we don't seem to have. It manifests itself in ways that you can't score or can't field or can't do something. Whereas the Braves manifest in ways that they're going to win no matter how many times they have to invent a new way to do it.
Yeah, I think that a lot of teams like to have that philosophy, but it doesn't always, because you have to have talent
Yeah.
to make that work. I mean, you have
Yeah.
to have 26 guys, 27 guys that are talented enough to make that work. When you push a button, when the manager pushes a button, the button has to respond.
Yeah.
The button has to do what the manager would like them to do. Now, in the Braves case, yeah, they have guys that have been there a while. It's a very stable franchise. When you show up at spring training, 60%, 70% of the guys on the team. You played with them last year. It's I mean, there's not many people that leave the Braves. And even the ones that leave at some point express some doubt. Or Freddie Freeman is the perfect example.
Exactly.
He went to the Dodgers, and a month after he was started playing with the Dodgers, he started expressing regrets about leaving the Braves.
Why did I leave? Why did I
Why did I
leave?
leave? What did I do? To the point where he was arguing in public with his agent.
Yeah.
I mean, why did you get me? Well, you told me to get you the most money, and the Dodgers offered us the most money, and you said yes. That's how we got here, Freddie. Doesn't really take a lot to
Yeah.
figure that out.
I always wondered about that too, Vinny. How did he okay a trade that he didn't really believe in? Well, he probably feels differently now.
Yeah, it looks. Listen, it's many, many, many years ago when I was covering the Mariners on a daily basis. I was at the winter meetings, and I remember it was the time when they were going to trade Ken Griffey Jr. They had decided that for whatever reason, believe who you want to believe, that. And I remember Dave Henderson telling me, the late great Hendu, telling me something that it stayed in my mind, and I've said this before on this show. Uh, Nobody will ever treat you as good as your first team. Once
Right.
you leave that team, there's a radical change that goes on in your career. You're now for the first time looking at 12 guys that are the enemy, but you know them intimately. You know their kids' names. And it gets under your bonnet. And it was interesting. We had a long talk about it actually, sitting in the lobby of right down the road from you there at the Dana Point, where the winter meetings were being held. And Hindu was down there, and we were sitting in the lobby, and we were rapping and flapping about this. And he says, "You watched it that no matter what, your original team is if you can at all stay with that team somehow, some way, stay with them because nobody will ever treat you better than that first team. They may throw all the money in the world at you. They may give you a limousine or a jet plane or whatever it is that outrageous thing you throw out there. But the reality is, nobody will ever treat you as good as that team.
The money's better, but that's about it.
And you think about it, and I think about it from the perspective of people that have left the Mariners and, have been big stars and have left the Mariners. And just the ones that come off the short list that I'm thinking of Rodriguez and Junior, Tino Martinez, maybe. But those players were never as revered, except maybe for Tino. But Tino was a special case. But those players were never as revered as they were by Mariner fans. I don't think that the minute that Ken Griffey Jr. got to Cincinnati, he had a stink on him.
Yeah.
His buddy Marty Brenneman there put a stink on him right away, and found out that you can't play in your father's footsteps.
And he's not the kid we thought he was.
Right. Well, he's not who as you find out with many people that you idolize in your life, that they're never really who you think they are. There's something different.
Well, you mentioned Freeman at first base. He went through that Ken Griffey dark night of the soul. I've made a big mistake. I should have stayed where I was. Well, if it ever got underlined in red Sharpie, it was this weekend when the Braves came to town and beat the Dodgers like they owned them. They treated them like a AAA team. All the Dodgers might and all the Dodgers bats went to sleep, and the Braves were hitting home runs at an extraordinary rate. Exactly. They needed a single, they'd get a home run.
Yeah.
And then the Braves announced that their starting pitcher, Julio Urias, is arrested under felony domestic violence. He's been taken from the team. He was under arrest, $50,000 bond, in and out of jail, away from not traveling with the Dodgers any longer. And Major League Baseball is going to make a call on it, but he's probably finished as a player. Now, that's not a given, and I'm not saying that he can't shake the stigma, but right now he's in serious legal trouble. His team doesn't want anything to do with him, and Major League Baseball likes to cut the umbilical cord when you pull a stunt like that. So
very different from how it was even 10 years ago.
Yep.
10 years ago, and I'm forgetting the guy's name now, but who was the guy that had the problem with the Dodgers?
He came from Cleveland, starting pitcher.
I can't, boy, for life me, I can't remember his name, but he got into domestic problems, 3 years ago?
He had a weird kink. He was bringing girlfriends in to have sex, but also to beat them up.
Yeah, there was a whole something going on there.
He's in Japan, where that's a sport in itself. So apparently he's going to be doing fine over there. I don't know how long his career is. He was an effective, unique starting pitcher. He had a lot of talent in baseball wise.
Right.
But he had a personality that was
he had a little Bob Crane action going on.
Troubled, to say the least.
Yeah. And I mean, if you think back to, I don't know, 20 years ago, guys that did domestic violence in Major League Baseball, for the most part, got away with it.
They were protected by their teams or their businesses or their wherewithal.
They were traded to another team where, I remember when Al Martin was traded here. He had a couple of he had like 2 wives, and he was married to a third, and then the third one he got to an argument with, that he came out with the famous quote, "If you open your mouth, I'll OJ you," or something, something along those lines.
Good thought.
Yeah, and Major League Baseball just sent him. The Mariners were happy to have him, and the baseball was happy to keep letting him play.
Well, he's like the Donald Trump reasoning. He said, "Well, they're not here to hurt me." Yeah, he's a danger to everybody around him, but not us. We're his teammates, so
right.
Let's play ball.
And it was, and I mean, he was a very deceptive guy in that there had to be some monster hanging out under there somewhere.
Yeah.
But I spoke to him on a number of occasions. I really didn't like to interview him, tell the truth. I didn't want to feature him or anything in any of the post-game shows if I could help it. But one of my contacts with him were very deceptive. He was a nice guy, would talk to you, but you got the feeling that there was something creepy about him.
Really?
Yeah, you just had that, just when you talked to him, it was just something was off.
And what happened to him eventually? Did he get traded again?
He was traded to another team after the season. And I think he might have lasted one more year somewhere. And gone. So it was done in a much more
baseball way.
Baseball way, yeah. We just put the stink on him. And then it's you won't see Al around here anymore.
That happens a little bit in radio too. Somebody will get the stink put on them by a general manager or a program director.
Oh yeah,
I'm taking it.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be true.
It's better if it's not true.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be true. All that you have to do is have a stink put on you by somebody who, for whatever reason, doesn't like you. Yeah, I mean, I've had that situation, and it's not pretty. It's not, because all of a sudden, you do a great job, and you think you're doing good, but you can't get a job to save your life, and you wonder what did I do? And it
Yeah,
does not create.
I imagine this will be the year we return to Seattle radio.
Well, I imagine it, Michael, but I'm going to be honest with you. You know, who knows? Who knows? I'm certainly open to it, but I also realize that there are certain stations that, for whatever reason, are not gonna. You know, it's funny. They will call you up to be a guest on one of their shows if something happens that relates to you, but they won't hire you.
Well, it's been my experience that the people who do the hiring don't know what they want. And if they did, they'd have better radio stations than they do. So they're willing to go to work every day and make the best out of something that they don't want. And that's what translates on the air. We've got something. It's not perfect. It's not what I wanted, but it's what we've got. And these guys have a contract. I can't get rid of them. This one knows the general manager. He's untouchable. This one's brand new. I can't fire him. He just got here. That's the radio that we're in today. It's make do radio. It's just keep the meters moving, but don't even dream of an excellent lineup or the world's greatest radio station.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think that you have a number of things going on, especially if it's an AM station. Um, the medium is slowly dying.
There's Hate Talk, though. Hate Talk seems to be doing very well.
And right, the only thing that moves the meters for anybody is hate talk. And if you are a person who is principled and doesn't want to do hate talk, you find it harder and harder to get employment.
You become a Gene Shepherd with no Gene Shepherd holes in the market for you.
You can. I mean, you can go down to Portland or go to San Francisco or L.A. and be a hateful talker if that's what you want to do. And if you can summon up that inside of yourself to do that on a daily basis, yeah, you could be okay.
And you've got the GOP talking points coming at you from all the candidates, so you know what to say. And if you're really good, you can come up with some your own hate talk stuff, make up shit on your own that's really wonderful. Like,
Right, and if you do well enough at it, you'll get a shot on a Fox or even a CNN if you're not too over the top. They'll give you a few minutes, and that'll help your career along. But for me, I can't go that direction.
it's it's a corrosive thing that eats away at the host himself. You think the hate talk host, if they're really into it, is going to be a success based on their talent and their convictions and their energy. But the fact is, when you're doing hate talk and making stuff up and lying on the air for profit, it is a corrosive exchange of business, your talent for their money, that eats the soul. And pretty soon you haven't got any innards to speak of at all because you've given it all to the process. The process of hate talk it kills people.
Right. But the flip side of that is you see a president or an ex-president that stands up and lies almost about everything that comes out of his mouth.
And you love him.
And 73% of people in his party would send him right back to the White House.
No matter what.
No matter what. He could lie, he could cheat, he could steal, he could do whatever he wants to do.
He can be convicted even.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's the space that you operate in today. And that's pretty much what you have to do. And if you don't want to do that, you can get yourself a little 1-hour show about cars every Saturday morning.
Glenn Beck recently asked ex-President Trump, you said you were going to lock up Hillary Clinton. This time when you get elected, are you going to start locking people up? And Trump said, well, I didn't want to, but that's what they're doing, so we'll have to. So here, if you wondered where the Stasi were, if you wondered where the Gestapo were, if you wondered where the remaining Proud Boys are and what their role is going to be when Trump gets reelected, now you know they'll be involved in this nationwide sweep of locking people up. And who would be on that list, Vinny? Of course, anybody who ran against them, anyone who ran from the other party. But then you've got to get what they always do in banana republics. You have to lock up all the professors. You have to
Right.
lock up the scientists. You have to lock up the theorists and the political scientists at the colleges. You have to take the intelligentsia level from coast to coast, the executives, the people behind high tech. They all have to go to prison. They all have to be put away. Their efforts must be stopped. And
Anyone who tells the truth.
anyone who's involved with information and can't be bought has to
Right.
go down, has to go down, and they
Must
must
be
go down
locked
hard.
up. And the people who are complicit with the dictator, the um, uh,
Tribal chief.
yeah, whatever it is, the cult leader, the dictator, the whatever you want to call it, the people who back him up or her, the people who will stand up for them will be their surrogate, as people like to say. Those people will roam around the streets continuing to tell lies until lying becomes just another thing. It doesn't, nobody really knows what the truth is anymore.
George Orwell called it new speak, N-E-W, speak. And that's when weakness became strength, lies became truth, war became peace, death became life. All those things became true in one day. And it was part of the newspeak. And everyone could speak that way. So when someone complained about being weak, they just say, weakness, that's strength. So look how happy you are being weak. What about the lies? No, the lie is good for you because the lie is the truth. There's our newspeak and there's our new mind. And that creates a new mental picture of how the world is. It's just the absolute backwards for Trump aficionados than it is for people here on planet Earth. Their world is backwards. Their reasoning is backwards.
It's a bizarro world.
They're idolizing a man who's a criminal, who's a liar, and who is a cheat. He's a fraud, and that's what they love about him. He isn't real. He's just everybody's got their own dream of Donald Trump. My personal dream is that he dies in the back of a limousine running into a palm tree, but that's only my dream. The 46% that are going to back him for president right now, what are they dreaming? What is their reality? How can they look at that man's face and see the Messiah? How can they not understand that it's the grift of all grifts, that it's so obviously created? How can they not
Because
see that?
it agrees, because he agrees with, and I don't even think he agrees with it as much as he has tapped into their world, their feelings. The dark guy down the street is coming for my job. Every problem I have is not my fault. It's somebody else's fault. He has tapped into those four guys who sit around a table at the coffee shop every morning and blame everything on
Kamala
everybody,
Harris. Yeah.
except where the blame really lies themselves, because they have a broken dream, they have an unfulfilled dream. Their kid didn't turn out like they wanted the kid to turn out. Life has not gone their way most of the time, because the people that are sitting at the other table, the table of knowledge, the people who have educated themselves, usually don't sit at that table long.
No.
They get up and they go somewhere. They do something because they got to get their day going. But the guys who you come back to at the coffee shop and they're still there at 11 o'clock complaining about everything that's going on in life, and they aren't retired, they're just not working. I'm sorry. Those people, and I've been one of them. So I know the monster. It's easy for you to sit there and blame it on, well, my rehab isn't going the way I thought it was going to go. I have this pain here, I'm this, I'm that, I'm the other thing. It's all the program director's faults. It's nobody wants to hire me. Nobody wants to do this. Everybody hit this whole town is against me. This, that, and the other thing. It's easy, and that's who Trump is tapped into.
And you know what that we've talked about this many times, but it always come back to it because it seems to focus it for me. All the what you just described is an example of fear. People who are angry are afraid of something, whether they know it or not. Their anger originates in fear because they don't like being afraid. They don't like being uncertain about life. They don't like that feeling of what's happening to me is out of my hands. And so
Right.
that anger about their situation expresses itself in a fear that we see all across the country. And I don't know how it got to be so embarrassing, so irrational to be a middle American white guy. But they look to be unplugged from reality to the point where Donald Trump, Donnie from Queens, of all people, is answering their dream. Now we talked about the Louisiana politics and what it was like to be the kingfish in Louisiana politics,
Right.
the Messiah coming to town to fix it for the little man, going to take care of the little man first. America's going to be great. When he's just putting the money in the pockets of his white Southern suit.
Yep. Yep.
And they didn't see it. They didn't see it then, and they don't see it now. And so this is something that we know the description of an American when they're described as a rube. These farmer boys that we're going to sell snake oil to tonight are nothing but rubes. Look them in the eye, lie to them, take their money. That's all there is to it. Look them in the eye, tell them the snake oil is going to work for them, lie them right down to the ground and take their money. That's the game. And it doesn't work without a rube. You got to have a wizard. That's me. I'm the snake oil man. I'm the doctor.
Right.
I'm a physician. I'm prescribing snake oil for you, my friend. And what I really need from you is a commitment to pay me now. Cash on the barrel head. You'll be a new man tomorrow.
Right. And a lot of times you have to have an accomplice. You have to have somebody who sits in the audience.
I'll take one.
Hey, it worked for me. You know, you have to have the Lindsey Graham or the Jeff Sessions.
But the guy from Ohio State, what's his name?
Oh yeah, Jim Jordan.
Jim Jordan.
You have
as
to
I live and
have
breathe.
that guy or woman or somebody who has a little bit of credibility left, but has gone over to your side.
The dark side.
And whatever little bit of credibility they have to be willing to sell it to you for whatever you think you can get. You know, you can get for it.
What is it that would make you feel better, angry white men? What would make you feel better? Knowing that America is going to be great again, knowing that I'm going to drain the swamp, knowing I'm going to lock up some people on the way, knowing that I'm going to take care of it. I'm going to sweep the bothersome politicians and liberals that you can't bear off the American landscape. I'm going to put them all in federal prison, and we're going to make America great again, starting with me.
To be honest with you, that's the big thing. It's tough to resist that because on one side you have the feeling of relevance. You know, really, a lot of it came to light in that special about Rudy Giuliani. Into this thinking, you want to remain relevant because when you are relevant, you get the better seats at the restaurant, you get the applause, you get the people that think that you're smarter than you really are.
And those were the days when the Yankees cared that he was a Yankee fan. They don't care anymore.
Right. They don't want. If he called up for a ticket at Yankee Stadium, they'd probably stick him somewhere up in the upper deck.
Say, Rudy, it's like this. There's a situation here. We got changes in management, and don't take this the wrong way. But not only can you not have parking, you can't have the tickets either.
Right. You got to take the subway up. The subway with those people. Well,
Yeah. Yeah, with New Yorkers? I'm riding with a car full of New
no,
Yorkers? No way.
no, you have to send a car for me. No, we don't, Rudy.
No.
You have the political pull of nothing.
You know where we are.
If you get here early, you can get in line out there on 161st Street and
You'll be
buy
in
a
the
ticket for $10
you'll be in the
out in the
bleachers and
bleachers.
you'll love it. It's a great way to see the game if you haven't been out there, Rudy. It's a great way to see the game. Unique perspective.
You get to see all the players' numbers except the catcher.
Yeah. And I'll tell you who he is. We'll get you a scorecard for sure.
And his name is no longer Jose Posada.
We got to make some changes. What can I tell you, Vinnie? You know, we got to grow. We got to keep moving. We're the Yankees.
And Billy Martin died a long time ago.
I'm wondering if they're going to change their manager. It's not the problem, but it is a solution.
Well, it always seems to be the first thing that goes, right?
Well, everybody else is long-term guaranteed contracts.
Yeah. I mean, really, it's the one who always takes it on the chin for whatever happens. How many times up here did they want to fire Lou Piniella? I mean, we have one guy who's still on the air in town. He made his bones every night by getting on the radio and screaming, "Fire Lou Piniella! Fire Lou Piniella!" This guy is a 22-year-old kid who has but he has the wiseness of an ant, and I'm detracting from ants when I say that. But who was smart enough to get on the radio every night and and tell lies and say that this guy is no good. He doesn't know what he's doing. He doesn't know how to manage a club. He's old and time has passed him by.
Oh dear.
But he catered to that patch of disgruntled Mariner fans, and there were many who thought that. Listen, I had people calling up the post game show, calling up and saying that Lou Piniella should be fired because he doesn't shave before games.
Wow. That was on the radio, right?
On the team's right shoulder station,
flagship station,
the flagship station.
Wow.
That Louis Piniella should be fired because he doesn't know how to be a manager.
Shaving is not enough. So if he shaved, that would be one thing. But fire him anyway for not shaving that one time or two times or any time. So his shaving schedule is the means by which we determine whether a manager is good enough for the American League.
But that's how.
What about Tito Francona? How often does he shave? What's his secret?
That must be that must be how he does it, is he shaves, and so therefore he is.
he's having some. Francona's having some season-ending surgery on his knee or hip or something that's been giving him fits for seasons, and he's finally going to get it fixed. And they love him so much in Cleveland and other places as well. He's a great manager, that they would want him to reassure them that he's going to come back, that this won't be the end of it. And I don't think he's called that yet. But what I love are his post-game or off the pre-game comments. For a manager, he's so well-spoken and direct and realistic about the situation that he's in. I just find him a breath of fresh air, even though he's been around a long time.
I would take him for the Mets in a flat-out minute. I actually got to know him a little bit when I was in Pittsburgh. We used to go over to Cleveland and watch American League games.
Right.
If we wanted to see a particular team, and got to know him a bit. And a great guy, a great human being, always willing to talk to you, and he doesn't suffer fools well.
Who does?
But
If you're a
that's
pool
usually a
sufferer,
sign of a
yeah,
great human being, right? They don't,
yeah,
if you're not if you're not here in the major leagues, get the hell out of here. If you
yeah.
don't know how to ask me a question, the right way to ask me a question, either just listen and you'll learn how to, or leave.
The question I hate in baseball, and it started years ago, and you don't hear it as much as you used to, but it's still there, and that is the sports writer who says, "Talk about that play at shortstop." The question will be, there was an error at shortstop in the fifth inning. What happened there? Not talk about it.
Well, you don't want to. You don't want to. Many guys don't want to put the manager in the position of having to say that his player did something wrong.
Yeah. How
I
did
mean,
you
that's
see
how we
that?
get there. That's exactly how we get there. Is many people that cover a team know that you don't ask the manager about errors and set the manager up to denigrate one of his players because it makes the manager look bad. And that's a result of many times somebody asking that question. What do you think about that error at third base in the fourth inning? And the manager says, "Well, he should have had it." So now the press guys, because they're
Yeah.
looking for something to the Dick Youngs of the world. They're looking for to create a little controversy, a little spark, a little something over 162 game season. So they run out to the third baseman and say, "Boy, you should have just heard what the manager said. He said you should have had that ball."
Well, that's a good point you make, Vin. That's a good point to ask the question in that way.
So you
Um,
learn over time that um, some managers you can just blurt out whatever you want to say, and they're gonna, But there's a group of managers who you have to speak to them in a way that doesn't create a quote.
when the Bronx Bombers were winning everything, did Casey Stengel talk to the press after every game?
I don't remember. I don't know. I really don't know. I mean, you're supposed to talk to the press after every game.
I think that's league policy now.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know if it was then, but at some point, yes, the manager has to have a press conference, and they finally got smart, and they finally did two smart things. They put a 5 minute cooling off period
Which
before
doesn't
they let
sometimes not enough.
media. Yeah, right. They'll let media into the clubhouse, and they'll also get the manager. And number one, try not to let him have any beers.
Right.
And number two, try to let him cool down a little bit.
Let's think of another way to say that, Casey. Let's think of another way.
And Lou did not have that filter on him. Mike Hargrove did not have that filter on him.
And it
Uh,
works both ways. It can be charming or it can be the wrong thing.
yeah, and with two very different results.
Right.
Um, Hargrove made a mistake of getting into a pissing match with the Japanese superstar of the team,
That ain't going to work.
especially when the team is owned by Japanese people. It's not going to fly. They make
What caused that?
they make millions. Uh, well, Ichiro. I mean, at some point, I think Ichiro thought he knew more about the game than Mike Hargrove did, and he
Arguable.
wanted to do what was best for Ichiro. So if he was told to take, and he saw a pitch he liked, he wasn't going to take it.
He stroked it.
He swang at it, and many times would connect. I mean, the guy was a
Yeah.
fantastic hitter, but and as the years wore on and the season wore on that year, I distinctly remember the manager, Mike Hargrove, getting more and more disgruntled with the situation. And I think it came to a head on over July 4th weekend, if I'm not mistaken.
Fireworks.
In the middle of the season, the manager packed up his pickup truck,
Pick 'em up truck and headed toward Pullman and beyond.
and took off. Said, "I don't need this." And the Mariners said, "Well, we really don't need you. We have a fine man in the clubhouse that's ready to manage the club. His name is John McLaren. That's it. That's all. See you later."
That's baseball.
Well, the Mariners' history has been that they don't want to get a manager who disagrees with the front office. They had that. They had gone through that for how many years?
What does the front office stand for? What is their credo? Their reason for being there? How do you not get along with someone who apparently has no direction in baseball?
You just get you get along with them. You assert the fact that you pay their salary, and that you will do what I say. And there's some baseball managers that go along with that, and there's some baseball managers, they're happy to have a job. One of 30 jobs in America, and will keep their mouths shut and go along.
And if you got a winning team, that's an easy job. And if you have a losing team, it's a very hard job.
And for some people, even if you have a winning team, it becomes a burden. It becomes an anchor around you, because you say, "This team is winning because of me.
How come you're not resting your bullpen?
I push the buttons."
Yeah, I know what you're saying.
You should keep your mouth shut up there in the front office and not do much of anything. Leave everything alone, and we'll be okay.
You want to do something? Get me a pitcher. Go on and get me one.
Well, it usually centered around a hitter.
Give me a pitcher who can hit.
But Lou was vociferous about what he wanted on the club, and Hargrove, to a degree, was vociferous about what he wanted on the club and what he didn't want on the club.
What did Lou want to do if he could have changed things?
Oh, he always wanted a hitter. Get me a hitter. We have plenty of pitching. Get me a hitter. I mean, that was his the year they won 116 games. He said all throughout the year that we'll be at a disadvantage in the playoffs because we don't have
the bats that they do. Yeah.
We don't have a guy who people are afraid to pitch to. We have a bunch of great players, but we don't have the Alex Rodriguez. We don't have the Ken Griffey Jr. I mean, he played the hand, but he was vocal about wanting, the Mariners went out and got him Jeff Cirillo, who was a guy he was a good hitter, but he wasn't a great hitter, and he had a couple of screws loose, I think.
Can you tighten those screws, or they're just loose forever?
Well, sometimes you can and sometimes you can't. I mean, that was if there was a bad thing about Lou, it was the fact that presented with a situation like that, he would do something to show up the front office more than he would try to make the situation work. I mean, if there was something that was bad about Lou, that was probably
Well, you get that with fiery people, and he was a fiery person.
Yeah, he was a fiery person. He was like, hey, you know what? When I got here, this place was nothing. And now look, everybody's got us in a conversation for greatest season of all time. So I think that uh, had they left Lou alone, had they gone out and got him, or just let him vent, and went out and got him a hitter, which I think they tried to do with Cirillo. I think they thought,
Thought he
for
was going to
whatever
bring a big bat.
reason,
Wake up and bring a big bat.
right? Well, it was strangely similar to the whole George Carl thing. George was always, get me a big man, get me a big man. I need a big man. I need get me somebody that can get me a center, a true center.
Who can score, run, and play and lead the team.
Right. And they went out and got him McIlvaine,
Who was a big man.
who was a big man but didn't have the skills. But according to somebody that was friends with McIlvaine and McIlvaine's agent at the time, George was all hot about McIlvaine. He thought he was the answer. But then something happened to turn him cold on McIlvaine. And the next thing you know, George is sitting McIlvaine on the bench. He's not playing him. And they give McIlvaine this big contract, and Sean Kemp says, wait a minute.
What'd you do that for?
What about me? I mean, I can see how this is going to go. And under the cap, you're only going to be able to give me this much, and it's not going to be as much as he's getting. And I'm your star.
And this guy just got here and is unproven.
And I mean, you grab this guy from the Bullets. So, there was that same situation, except that I think George was more adept at playing because you only have 5 guys, so you have to make some adjustments. You have to eat some of your words somewhere along the line.
And you remember that George Carl was a stickler for defense. If you couldn't play defense, if you weren't naturally talented in that regard, you're going to have a hard time in his scheme. And you weren't going to.
Teams were built on rebounds and defense.
Yep, and he was going to be unhappy if he didn't get both.
That's what his, that's what his teams. That's what That's why Nate McMillan was such a great player for him. That's why Michael Cage was such a great player for him. That's why Sam Perkins,
Detlef,
because they were smart players that sure could drain a 3, but they could also get in there under the basket and grab a ball and steal a ball. Or
everybody you mentioned was 6'9" or taller, so they were big men in their own regard, although their skills were that of a forward.
Right. He had 5 guys out on the floor many times who could play any position.
Yep.
You had guys that were smart enough to be a point guard. If for some reason you had Gary out of the game or whatever, or the situation didn't allow for you to feed the ball to Gary to get it up the floor, there was somebody else there that could do that had the brains to do that.
But George Carl realized that even though that was true, and they had a team that was of good size and able to play a lot of different ball, if your opposing team in the West, a strong team, had a big man, you couldn't answer to that, and that's the problem. If you don't have a big man and they do, you've got a situation. I don't know how you're going to answer that situation, but if he's a talented scoring, versatile center, NBA style, you got your hands full. And over time, especially in series ball, when you're playing one another for all the marbles, they just get the advantage. The play to that center always gives them the advantage to dish or to score.
Right, and there had been such a disconnect between George and Wally, especially after Whitsitt was kind of out of the picture,
Yeah.
that it was really it was sad to see because they had a great thing. They had a spectacular team for 10 years.
Winning became a habit for the team, but they never crested the challenge of their competitors. They just couldn't be better than they were.
Well, yeah, and in many ways they were better, but other teams, for some reason, it had a knack for figuring out what George was doing. And in that 7-game series in the playoffs that you would see him,
Yep.
you would be able to figure it out by game 1 or by game 2 or 3. You knew what he was doing. And so you adjusted your team accordingly. And that's why the Lakers could beat you in the first round. That's why the Denver Nuggets could beat you in the first round.
And although we had a shooting team instead of a really traditional team built around the center, we were not draining a lot of threes. There was not a 3 team. As often as we would think of ourselves as a scoring juggernaut, we weren't sinking a lot of threes. And Gary didn't shoot a lot from outside, and neither did Shrimp or Ricky Pierce or any of the small men that we had over the years who were shooters.
No, I think your best 3-point shooter, if I'm not mistaken, was Hersey Hawkins.
And he was an early player.
And he used to shoot the threes pretty well. Detlef could, at times, Detlef was a smart player.
Yeah.
So he could see he knew what his strengths was and where he could shoot from and where he couldn't. I don't know that you saw Detlef take a lot of bad shots. He always struck me as an intelligent player who knew the floor, who knew, where he could shoot from and how he could shoot from on the floor for a 3.
Yeah.
A lot of other guys just threw it up there and hoped.
That's probably the way the league has changed more now than since that time of the Sonics' great runs. Is the offensive teams is just so much more potent and consistently on their firing and successfully so from the threes.
Yeah. It's you have much more. Remember they used to have that. George used to use that plus minus system, like in hockey. When this guy's out on the floor, we're a plus 10. When this guy's out on the floor, we're it was related to how many points were scored when that particular alignment of the team was out on the floor. And he was one of the only ones using it. He thought of it pretty much before anybody. I think Phil Jackson might have been the only other guy using it. And as time went on and computers became more in vogue and more involved in the game,
everybody had that angle.
Those angles became much more common. It's why Nate, I think, became such a good coach, because he really followed George. And his teams played defense. Nate was a defensive guy, could steal the ball from you before you knew that it was gone.
My favorite Nate McMillan interview was, I said, Gary Payton talks all the time. Is there any time that he doesn't talk? And he says, I can hear Gary Payton through the hotel walls. There's no time that Gary stops talking or takes a pause or grows quiet or thoughtful. If he's got something on his mind, it's going to come out and you're going to be able to hear it right through the wall.
Well, remember that Nate was our guest the morning of, and it was the morning of the Oklahoma City bombing. We were at Green Lake.
We were in a remote.
Yeah, we were at a remote at Green Lake, and Nate was with us. He had come down to the remote, and he was our guest that morning. More than a guest, I mean, we had him on for I think a couple of hours. I think he came like at 8 or something like that, and was there until whatever time
And
it
that
was.
that day and that awful day was the
Yeah, that
work
was
of
horrible.
angry white guys again.
Yeah, because we had to keep going to updates. We kind of broke our format a little bit and went to
When
update.
Oklahoma talk.
Yeah, people it was that were on what was happening. One of several bad news days that we had gone. We would go to different events that transcended sports.
It
That
doesn't,
did.
if something important happens, it doesn't take much to push sports off the top of the page. Um,
Well,
it's only because sports is like an elective. It's a pastime. It's a pleasure. It's an entertainment, and it seems hard to concentrate on it fully when there's a bad news day.
but we did have times when sports program directors said, "Don't break the format. Don't
Yeah.
mention, just we'll run an update at the top of the hour." And I think the philosophy was that people wanted to escape from what was happening, and so they would come to sports.
That's a good theory.
I don't know if it is. I don't think it gives you now. Maybe a day or two after the event happens. Yes,
And we
but
know sports people who only have the sport in their life. They don't have any
right,
interest in the
right,
news. They don't care about the world situation. They don't care about international tensions. They just want to know why the Yankees lost. Well, I
right,
understand that, but if events transpire to overshadow that point of view, to overshadow whether the Yankees won or not, even the Yankee fan has to understand that for one day.
right. It's
We'll
always
be
been
back
my
to sport.
belief that if you get a major story like that, at least for the first while it's happening, while it actually is breaking news,
Right.
if you have a major shooting, although now it probably wouldn't qualify. But back in those days, when somebody walked into a supermarket and shot 10 people, it was a major story.
When they shoot 20, call me back.
Yeah. Um, and you had an obligation, I always thought, to let your listener, you couldn't treat your listeners like idiots. You
You
had to
mustn't.
give people some kind of credit that they were interested in the world condition. So if you had somebody major that died, if you had a shooting like that you had to at least acknowledge it and move on. I mean, I remember the morning Kurt Cobain died, and we went and got Joel Selvin, who I think had written a book on Cobain at that point, or had some pretty good knowledge of him, but that was a local story that you couldn't ignore.
You have
Our
to.
audience listened to Nirvana.
Yeah. No,
Our
that's
audience,
an obvious. Yeah.
the people that we serviced, were aware of Nirvana.
By the way, speaking of rock stars who die and become part of the news, Gary Wright died at the
Yes,
Dreamweaver, the man who was part of Spooky Tooth for years. And I didn't realize till I saw his bio that he was born in Cresskill, New Jersey. He was not English. He played with English groups almost his entire life. He seemed to have a career that was based in England, but he was, in fact, a good Jersey boy. And his album Dreamweaver and My Love Is Alive deserve to be among the great of classic rock.
Yeah,
Absolutely fabulous compositions, and so well recorded.
he um he was yeah, uh Cresskill is part of an area in Bergen County that has Cresskill, Dumont, Glen Rock, and I forget there's another town, Tenafly,
Tenafly, oh, gotcha.
Tenafly, which are all in a kind of a just a packed in area of Bergen County. And my parents, I think I've told you the story. We almost moved to Cresskill when I
You
was
could
a
have been
kid.
you could have been a Dreamweaver, Vinny.
That was yeah. Well, the funny thing about me, and us probably about Gary Wright is we know another Gary Wright.
Yeah, we do.
So it was always funny when his name would come up. When the Seahawks Gary Wright's name would come up, you'd always think about, I wonder if Gary really knows about, and I'm sure he does. And when the first thing when I saw that yesterday, the first thing that I thought of, well, there's only one Gary Wright left now.
And Gary Wright of the Seahawks was a bit of a Dreamweaver in his own right.
Was was
He patched
one of
together
the
a lot of
best
dreams. Yeah.
one of the best people you'll ever meet.
He was a press liaison and loved everybody. Everybody returned that love. He had the respect of everybody in the league. He did a great job for the Seahawks, come hell or high water, and always maintained his gentlemanly status. He was, if you want to run a press office in the NFL today, be Gary Wright. That's all I'm going to say about that. Be a
Right.
Dreamweaver.
He was absolutely the best. He was the kind of guy that would do you any kind of favor
Yes.
that you would ask him for.
He wrote me a letter of recommendation, which I still have.
Yeah, yeah, he is. He retired from the Seahawks. He still has uh, uh, stuff to do with the soccer team.
He's an
Uh,
emeritus.
but he is, he's still, I guess, still the uh, yeah, the public relations director emeritus of the Seahawks. But you couldn't ask for, and when you and how you found that out is when you went to cover a Super Bowl and you saw how much of everything in the league ran through Gary Wright. He was the guy at the Super Bowl. He was the man you needed to see if you needed something done.
Because with press coming from all over the world, Gary would just take care of it. And it wasn't like, you can't come in, you can't watch, you can't have credentials, you can't film here. That's not the kind of guy he was. It was, how can I help you? Yeah, it's not over here. We'll get you a temporary badge. No, you're fine. And remember, be here half an hour early. I'll get you what you need. Here's your setup spot. Yeah, you got a drop for radio. It's at that table over there. I know it's at the end, but you guys came late. We're gonna accommodate you.
If you pissed Gary Wright off,
How can you do that?
you were the fault. It was your fault.
It's your damn fault.
Yeah. There was no. Well, it's his fault. Anybody who worked, who encountered Gary Wright, the Seahawks, Gary Wright, in anything that he did, uh, would marvel. Like they don't make humans like this anymore.
In fact, they don't.
No, that genre of PR guy who really believed it was about relations has long disappeared
Yeah.
from the face of the earth.
We started this broadcast, Mikey and Vinnie, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 10 past 10. We started our broadcast talking about the new Rolling Stones album and a neighborhood in London called Hackney.
Yes.
Well, I've looked it up so we can end the show on why they called their new album Hackney Diamonds. Hackney has become so enduringly popular in the 21st century because it manages to be hip and practical. Hackney has won accolades as London's most livable borough, one of the 15 coolest neighborhoods in the world. So there you go. So when I'm living in London, I thought I was going to live in Chelsea and Knightsbridge, but apparently I'm going to live in Hackney, where the diamonds are.
Well, Michael, that's a good thing, but I have a different take on Hackney.
Let's hear it.
When I was coming up, I think I've told the story before, for a couple of years, I drove a soda truck for the Hoffman. Actually, it was the American Beverage Company, but we sold Hoffman, Dr. Brown's, Yoo-Hoo, not Coke, not the demand, what they call the demand items, but good brands.
Right. Local brands.
Well, Yoo-Hoo's a national brand. Yeah, I forget what they had a couple of national brands. We had Needix soda, which was a popular soda, and Hoffman was a East Coast brand that was known for having real fruit in their soda. If you got a Hoffman lemon and lime, there were little pieces of lemon and lime in that soda, and the truck bodies are unique on soda trucks. Instead of having one door at the back, they have like 6 compartments on each side, which have roll-up doors.
Gotcha.
It's a special truck. And those trucks are manufactured by the Hackney Custom Body Company.
The same guys who were responsible for calling a taxi a hack.
I don't know about that, but their trucks are used. I don't know if they still are to today, but were most of the soda trucks you saw on the road had a little tag on the back that said Hackney Truck Bodies.
Where did they make those?
Boy, that's a good question. I'm sure they have a couple of plants around the country.
Well, we'll figure that out later.
I'm going to say Midwest somewhere. Probably somewhere in Indiana.
Next to the Studebaker factory.
Near the Studebaker, probably near, Indiana is the home of every RV maker in the free world.
Now they're going to have to give 4-wheel drive super tires. You can get out of Burning Man under any conditions in our RV.
Let's see, Hackney. I'm going to look to see if I can find where these Hackney vehicles are made. Washington, North Carolina, according to, now that's their beverage division, which they make trucks for not only soda companies, but beer companies. They're those side, you can immediately tell them because they have the doors.
You got those roll-up doors
on the sides, and so you can load the pallets.
Yep.
Into the side load them in and take it back out again. So yeah.
Remember when you're downloading, you're unloading the drinks onto your hand cart, to roll the thing down and lock it before you go into the store, because you can't leave a 16 cases of beer open to the world on most streets in America without losing some, what they call shrinkage.
Well, yeah, your mission was, when you were doing, and I had a route for a long time that was in Bedford-Stuyvesant, Brooklyn.
A town of opportunity.
The Brooklyn of then was not the Brooklyn of today. Very different Brooklyn. And the trick is you had to get into Brooklyn by 7:00 in the morning and out by 1:00, because that's when the junkies would start waking up.
Men of opportunity.
And if you wanted to escape with all the cash that you had, Because in those days, the soda truck drivers used to carry cash. We used to, the mom and pops would have to pay
Yeah.
for their sodas cash or a check. But so you get it from both ends. Somebody would either try to rob you for the cash that they thought you had,
Or just kill you.
or just rob your soda. And so you wanted to get in and out as quickly as possible. That was the kind of the joke is you had the 6 hour route. Nobody stayed in Bedford-Stuyvesant more than 6 hours. So it was that's when I quit this. Bedford-Stuyvesant is when I quit the soda business. After I got I had a route in Manhattan for a long time, the east side of Manhattan, from 14th to 59th. West side,
Wow.
excuse me. West side. From 14th to 59th.
Right to Columbus Circle.
And it was hard work, man. It's the hardest I ever worked in my life.
You got to schlep, huh?
Well, you had to schlep everything down basements, through hallways,
Yeah.
up to second floors. I mean, it was amazing. Nobody's storeroom was right next to the restaurant.
Sorry, that's not how we do it.
Yeah, we used to sell a lot of splits, which are those little 7-ounce bottles.
Yep.
See behind the bar of tonic. Usually it's tonic water. Usually I have a machine for the a gun for the
Right.
Coke and the club soda, but tonic water for some reason didn't keep well in a gun.
You needed the spritz.
You needed the spritz. So we used to sell a ton of 7-ounce. I had some I had some very famous restaurants as customers. The Old Homestead and Joe's Pier 52 and the Village Gate. Some of those places were really good customers, and they used a lot of tonic water.
Making sophisticated drinks for the clientele. Listen to the jazz.
Very popular. Very popular. And we had a Tom Collins mixer.
Yeah. And here comes Vinnie in the truck to make it all happen.
Exactly.
A Hackney body.
Hackney soda truck. So that was my connection to Hackney. So I didn't know that Hackney was a neighborhood in London. I had no idea.
I didn't either. I mean, I sort of buzzed under the radar, but I didn't know anything about it or where it was. It could have easily have been in Northern England for all I knew. But apparently Hackney is also renowned for a thriving music scene. So for the Rolling Stones' new album, which is, I don't know what number 70, how many albums have they had? It's pretty hard to figure that one out.
You count bootlegs?
I'll count anything.
Well, you got to figure they got a 40-year head start on Springsteen. Well, not 20-year.
I know that this new one is just out called the Hackney Diamonds. And now we know that it's good songs that would have come out of the Hackney music scene, perhaps. And the first song, which is called Angry, sounds stonish, but it also is a different. It's been a while since they've taken on a different persona, like they did with Painted Black, or some of where they changed up their Stone sound to achieve some other sonic identity.
Some girls,
exactly,
which really was a dividing line between rock and roll Stones and disco Stones.
And Shattered, same thing.
Yeah. Well,
all over Manhattan.
And even Emotional Rescue had a different.
Oh yeah, boom, 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 boom. Very distinctive beat.
Almost a funk beat to it.
Yeah.
Boom, boom, boom.
Emotional Rescue. I always liked that song.
Which one?
I always liked Emotional Rescue.
Yeah. I always liked Emotional Rescue. Who are they using for a drummer?
The guy that's been on tour with them. In fact, he has a prominent sound in this new single because it opens up with a sort of a cold beat. And I can't recall his name right now.
But same guy. So he's kind of now the
guy that Keith brought in from his solo career.
right. There's no it's funny you mentioned that. I was just listening to that his solo album, the one that they released. I don't know if he has more than one, but that great solo album where he sounds like Al Green.
Oh yeah.
Um, has the organ and that kind of really kind of Memphis soul sound. Almost Booker T and the MG Stax Volt.
If you're looking for a Keith song that doesn't sound like him or the Stones, listen for one that he covered, a Toots and the Maytals song called "Careless Ethiopians," and it's just a wonderful song that he repurposed for in his own right, in his own style. And the Hawkins back to Toots and the Maytals, who unfortunately are no longer with us. But it also shows that Keith can loosen up and do another style, like the Stones
Yeah,
do when they do country music.
I don't think that Keith ever got has ever gotten the due that he deserves as a musician. I mean, he's always been kind of the joke, with the blood transfusions and all of that stuff. But I enjoyed his solo albums. I always thought Keith was a lot more central to holding that band together than a lot of people gave him credit for.
Well, more than anything, he is the rhythm sound to the whole shooting match. There is no start me up without Keith.
Right.
There is no true rock and roll without his signature simplified. Over the years, he's playing simpler and simpler, bigger and simpler because you get smarter and you know how to do it.
Yeah.
And the whole idea of a Rolling Stone sound is something that he created as a young man, but that he refined as an older man.
Well, it was always grittier than the Beatles. I mean that was back then. Now the Beatles, as they became a more commercial act as they got away from the Cavern Club, refined. You
Yep.
see the steps of the refining of their sound. The Stones never
Got dirty.
really,
Let's get dirtier.
every once in a while along the way, they'd come up with or Satanic Majesty's Request or something like that, but they never got their sound refined until Sticky Fingers, maybe.
Exile on Main Street. A lot of people
Yeah,
think that was
I
the
mean, it
turning
took
point.
them years. They had that gritty blues um, genre sound, long into long past Revolver and Help and
And think of another player like Keith Richards, who early in his career on an early Stones tour of the South, they were on the same bill as Bobby Goldsboro, who got his start as a session guitarist in Nashville and played the 5-string guitar, a Fender Telecaster with no bass E string. You take it off, you don't use it, you don't even string it. You have 5 strings. And Keith said, "What the hell is a 5-string guitar?" Bobby Goldsboro said, "You get this sound, you get this sound, you can tune it this." Takes off his E string and has been playing 5-string guitars since then. And it has a lot to do with his open guitar sound that he uses so often, because Mick keeps coming up with lyrics, Keith has to keep coming up with riffs, and the solution to that often the times over the years has been give me the 5-string guitar, because it has a different sound, and it's a sound that everybody who loves the Rolling Stones is familiar with. You've heard it, but try and recreate that on your guitar. It can't be done. You've got 6 strings for starters. But the fact that it came from Bobby Goldsboro, of all people, of all tours, of all chance meetings, Keith Richards meets Bobby Goldsboro in the South during their, 20 acts on a bill, everybody traveling in a bus. And there's Bobby Goldsboro singing Honey, but playing a trick from the studios in Nashville that turned Keith Richards on to an entirely different way to play the guitar.
wow, that's a trip, man. That I had never heard that story about Bobby Goldsboro.
I think that was in Keith's book.
That's a trip, man. Yeah, I just didn't. I just hadn't
Nashville
heard that
Cats,
story.
you know? It's hard to imagine a cooler group of people than studio musicians. You get the wrecking crew together in a room, and besides entertaining everybody with their crazy stories, they're gonna cut 5 hits that day. You get a Nashville Cat playing, who do we play behind? Doesn't matter. Could be anybody. Could be we don't know this guy's name. We're just doing the tracks. We'll meet him later. And they do this fantastic job. They do this remarkable creation. I think the coolest people in the world are studio musicians who create, pack up their guitars, and leave.
It's a job.
It's a job. We're going to the next gig. What are you doing? Don't know. Know when we get there. Cutting another hit.
I think that's the way. You know, it's funny because it's just I mean, I know it's not like it, but in some ways, it's kind of like that they're going to work at an insurance company.
They're the
They open the
insurance.
briefcase, take out the guitar or the bass or whatever they're using.
And why are they the insurance company? Because they bring them in. You haven't got anything now. The tape is blank. The song has been written. It's never been recorded. Your singer's not even there. What are you going to do? Don't worry about it. These guys are going to come up with the track. They're going to come up with the pieces. You're going to love the rhythm track. Just give them a minute. Give them a minute. They haven't even heard the song yet.
It's funny. That would be a kind of an interesting name for a group, the insurance company.
And it was used again, and the same theory was used in Motown for all their recordings.
Yeah,
The best jazz musicians in Detroit became the studio call upon band. There was only 10 guys that did it all. And the horn section would change now and again, and they'd have arrangers maybe do the strings. But for the bass, drums, guitars, and organ, for the piano, for the lead sax, it was the same cats over and over again, doing the Supremes, doing the Temptations, doing the Four Tops, doing Who Have You Got? Martha and the Vandellas, bring them in. Hey,
wow.
could you guys stick around? Smokey's got a song he just wrote down the hall. Yeah, we got time for that. How's it go? And they cut another hit.
That's pretty crazy, man. I mean, that's it must be. I mean, I noticed so many of these people, had different gigs and they were but I mean, you think of like what is it that Tedesco and
Carol K.
Carol Kay, and their entire job is just going, getting up in the morning, stopping at Starbucks, getting a coffee, and,
Sit down and play.
and then go in and play, and you're banging out, you know, 25, 25, 30 songs a week,
Larry Maxwell,
commercials, hits, not so hits, some guy that somebody wrote, something somebody wrote. I mean, it really
soundtrack
is
for movies.
phenomenal. I mean, because you don't have time to play. You don't have time to play your own stuff. You're just out there playing everybody else's stuff, but you're making a hell of a living doing it.
And there's an openness that you have to have. You have to sit down saying, we're gonna make this work in 3 minutes.
Right. There's no, well, that's not me. I wouldn't play that. They send you right out the front door or the back door, actually. And I mean, it must have been a trip to go to work and, okay, who do we got today? Well, let's see. At 9:30, we got a session with Frank Sinatra.
Followed by
At
Sonny and Cher.
at 2 o'clock, Sonny and Cher are coming in with Phil Spector. We're going to have them. And then we got an evening session tonight with these four guys that Don Kirshner is bringing in that he put together in some audition hall.
They're called the Donkeys. No, that's wrong. No, they're not the
Yeah,
Donkeys.
but it's pretty good because Neil Diamond, you remember him. We played backup on Cherry Cherry. He's coming in with them, and he's got a few things he's written for him.
I heard the other day in my shuffle the Jon Stewart version of "Wake Up, Sleepy Jean," teenage. Oh, what does it mean to
Oh,
the
Daydream
teenage?
Believer.
Daydream Reliever. There you go. Written by a member of the Kingston Trio, John Stewart.
Um. Oh, really? I see. I thought no, Carol. No, no, no. You know what I'm thinking of? Pleasant Valley Sunday. That was written by Carol King.
No doubt. Sounds like her, doesn't it?
Yeah, yeah. It's got all of the. I don't know if she wrote it with Jerry Goffin or not, but that was. Yeah, that was Carol King.
Did you see the Little Richard?
No, I didn't, and I meant to tape it and I forgot. I'm sure it'll be available. I know they'll rerun it. Did you see it?
Yes. My favorite scene was Richard had left rock and roll and was a preacher man, and he got a chance to tour England. And when he got over there, he realized these people love me, and he started singing his hits again. And the English band that was backing him was on stage wondering what it was going to be like. And the club opens and they say, "Here's Little Richard." And he's not on stage. They don't know where he is. The lights go to the balcony and Little Richard screams, "I am an atom bomb." Jumps, he jumps down, gets to the stage, and tore the place apart. Literally, there weren't any chairs left. Everything was destroyed. And it was destroyed in an adoration and in what's the word I'm looking for? Everybody reached their critical mass. These English kids went freaky to the point of just dancing in the aisles and destroying their chairs. The cops didn't know what to do with them. The band didn't know what to do with it. Little Richard had taken off most of his clothes and was just sweating, jumping up and down. And Bamalama Bamaloo. And if you got Tutti Frutti and Miss Anne and everybody else, one after the other, rip it up, he tore the place apart. And it went to regenerate his career. That's the time he met the Beatles and took him to Hamburg, and it was an interesting time. But he could never sustain it. Every time he'd become a rocker, the Lord would call him back.
Yeah.
Every time the devil would get him and tell him to be the man that he was, God would call him back, and he would change his direction. He would have something going. He would have a career. He would have a contract. He would have dates to meet and to do, and something would destroy him. Like his tour of Australia. That's when he freaked out on the airplane and said, if we land safely, I'm through. I'm giving my life to God." And he just went through so many of those moments in his life where the church called him back and blunted his extraordinary and lava-like talent.
Yeah, because he was such. I mean, he could have been. I always thought that he could have been a lot bigger than he was, and he was pretty damn big.
He was pretty damn big.
But it always just seemed like there was.
Everything went like his first contract. It was Specialty Records. He had a three album deal. He was 18 months into it when he found the Lord. And so after 18 months into the deal, with all the other recording that he did, they stopped paying him. Then, 1957, they stopped paying him. So Richard had to make money on the road, being a preacher man, or rock and roll, being a sinner. And he just couldn't weigh the both. He couldn't be both. He couldn't be a rock and roller and he couldn't be a preacher. He'd give himself to the Lord, then the music would call him. He'd give himself to the music and the Lord would call him. Sad and frustrating to watch that cycle over and over again.
Yeah, always amazing. I saw him a couple of times. I saw him at the Felt Forum.
Can't see your face, Vin.
Oh, sorry. I saw him at the Felt Forum in one of the Richard Nader shows, and I saw him down at the Academy of Music on 14th Street, which was a theater that they used to have. Rock Magazine used to put on these oldies shows,
right?
Similar to what you see on PBS. Only the acts weren't so old. This was in 68, 69, 70. So these acts were only really, a lot of them were still playing in some shape or form.
Sure.
But they would round them all up for these shows.
A cavalcade.
Yeah, it was a recreation of the bus tours of the 50s.
Yeah.
If you played on a bus tour in the 50s, you were probably on one of rock magazines, and you got to see some great acts. I mean, Little Richard, Fred Paris, and the Five Satins. Gene Chandler, the Duke of Earl.
Dude, dude.
And they were still, while not in their prime, they were all working as something else.
Right.
Were still good enough and still had it. And Little Richard had it more than anybody else.
Boy, he had it.
He had it before anybody else had it, and better than anybody else had it. It's just a phenomenal talent.
He gave himself so much to the music. You see him with his shirt off, sweating like he's working shoveling coal. He is pounding the piano, dancing. If there's a piano, he's on top of it. He's leading the band. The place is jumping, and it starts with Tutti Frutti, and it just will not stop.
Yeah, anybody who says that that rock and roll is not hard work, and you'd only listen or look at these guys that go out there and the Little Richards and I don't know if Chuck Berry ever broke a sweat, but Fats Domino sure did.
Chuck know how to put on a show.
Yeah. All right, man.
Too much monkey business. Shall we meet again? Shall we meet again on Friday? A Freaky Friday?
Yeah, let me play this for you real quick. I don't even know if it's going to come through the TV, through the thing here, but let's try it and see.
Hey, Mick, New York Vinnie, News Radio 710 Cairo. How's your songwriting style changed these years as opposed to what it was early on in your career? And how do you keep looking so young?
Oh, that's for a sweetheart. I planted this guy.
We love you.
This guy is my father, really. I mean, I think that we used to write songs, like Keith and I used to write songs hurriedly on the road, wake up and over a cup of coffee. I mean, now we sort of go and lock ourselves up for weeks on end in sort of
have a cup of coffee.
Very nice houses. But it's basically the same thing, But, I think we learned over the years you can write songs in many, many, many different ways. So you take advantage of those.
We have a question in the back center.
Yeah, Alex Ferguson, Sky Sports, UK.
There you go.
Good job, Ben.
Had to get one in, man. Had to get somebody laughing. I mean, just the fact that I made Mick Jagger and Keith Richards laugh was.
It's like you were their neighbor in Hackney. That's what it sounded like to me.
Exactly. All right, man. I will catch up with you on Friday if the Lord's willing.
Freaky Friday. I'm going to be babysitting Thursday night, so I might be a little groggy, but I'll be here. And without a doubt, Mikey and Vinnie, 10 past 10, Friday morning.
If the Lord's willing, the creek don't rise, we will raise a glass of peace, a glass of love, and a jug of Manischewitz.
What a wine. See you, Vinnie.